Amara Johnson had always lived with the kind of determination that people in wealthier parts of the city could never truly understand, the kind of grit that came from watching her mother scrub other people's floors until her hands were raw and her back bent, the kind of resilience born from seeing her father work double shifts at the factory until his heart gave out one night when she was barely 12, leaving her and her younger brother Malik in a world that didn't care whether they survived or not. And so at 20 years old she carried the weight of 2 lives on her shoulders, balancing her own dreams of becoming a doctor with the crushing responsibility of making sure Malik had food to eat, clothes that fit, and the chance to believe in a future brighter than the poverty-stricken neighborhood they had always called home. Their apartment was a crumbling 2-room unit in a building where the pipes rattled, the walls were thin enough to hear every argument, every baby's cry, every gunshot echoing in the distance. But Amara never let Malik see her despair, never let him sense the fear that sometimes clawed at her chest at night when she wondered if she could keep everything together. Instead she smiled, studied late into the night, worked at the diner in the mornings and cleaned offices at night, all while holding onto the fragile hope that one day she would wear the white coat of a doctor and rewrite not only her own story but her brother's too. That morning, the morning that would change everything, she had woken up before dawn to review her notes for her final biology exam, the exam that was the key to renewing her scholarship, because without it she would not be able to afford tuition and all her sacrifices would collapse like sand castles against the tide, and she had whispered a prayer over Malik's sleeping form, brushing his curls back gently before leaving with her battered backpack and worn-out sneakers that had seen better days, clutching a granola bar she couldn't even finish because of the nervous fluttering in her stomach, knowing that today meant everything, yet life, as it so often did, had other plans. She rushed through the cracked sidewalks, weaving past construction, stray dogs, and the endless stream of indifferent cars honking at one another, her heart pounding with the rhythm of the ticking clock. But as she cut through the wealthier district where the air seemed cleaner and the streets were lined with towering glass buildings that glistened in the rising sun, she noticed something unusual, a luxury Bentley parked crookedly at the curb, its hazard lights blinking, and through the window she caught sight of a woman slumped over the steering wheel, her skin ghostly pale, her lips parted in desperate gasps, and before Amara even realized what she was doing, her feet had carried her to the car, her hands tugging at the heavy door as a frantic driver scrambled out, shouting incoherently, "She's not breathing, please, somebody help," and in that split second Amara's mind warred between 2 choices. Keep running and make it to her exam, or stop and risk everything. But her heart had already decided, because deep down she knew she could never live with herself if she left someone to die. She dragged the woman out with the driver's help, laying her on the pavement as memories of CPR training in her pre-med classes rushed back, her hands trembling yet firm as she tilted the woman's head, checked her airway, and pressed her palms to her chest, counting compressions while the driver called 911 with shaking fingers, and Amara's voice rang out steady despite her fear, "Stay with me, ma'am, stay with me," as she pushed again and again, sweat dripping down her brow, her backpack with all her exam notes abandoned on the ground, time slipping through her fingers like sand in an hourglass, and when the paramedics finally screeched to a halt, rushing with their equipment, one of them looked at her with genuine admiration and said, "If you hadn't started CPR, she wouldn't have made it," but Amara, chest heaving, only nodded weakly, her mind already spinning with dread because she knew what this meant. She had missed her exam. Still, as she watched the woman loaded onto the stretcher, her hand briefly clutching Amara's in a weak but thankful squeeze, she felt a warmth in her chest that no grade could ever give, though that warmth cooled quickly as reality struck later that afternoon when she stood in her professor's office, explaining breathlessly what had happened, only to be met with the cold indifference of a man who cared more about rules than lives. His words slicing into her like knives, "Miss Johnson, life is full of choices, and you chose not to be here, therefore I cannot make exceptions," and when she tried again, voice breaking, "But I saved someone's life, doesn't that matter?" He merely adjusted his glasses and shook his head, "It's unfortunate, but rules are rules, your scholarship will not be renewed," and Amara stumbled out of the office with tears burning her eyes, her future crumbling with each step until she finally collapsed in the library stairwell, burying her face in her hands as silent sobs racked her body, the weight of disappointment heavier than she had ever known. That night, she returned home to Malik, forcing a smile as he asked how her exam went, unable to crush the innocence in his hopeful eyes, so she lied softly, "It'll be okay, baby, don't worry," even though inside she felt like the walls of the world were closing in, and she lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if sacrifice was always met with suffering, wondering if perhaps she was cursed to always lose no matter how hard she tried. But as dawn broke and she prepared to drag herself into another long day of work, a sound unlike any she had ever heard before roared down their broken street, the low, smooth purr of a luxury engine that silenced the usual morning chaos. And as curtains rustled and neighbors peeked out, Amara stepped to the doorway of their shabby building just in time to see a gleaming black Rolls-Royce Phantom glide to a stop, its polished surface reflecting the morning light like a jewel dropped in the middle of dirt. And when the tinted window lowered, Amara's breath caught as she recognized the elegant woman whose chest she had pressed against the pavement just hours ago, now alive, radiant, and smiling with tears in her eyes as she spoke. Words that would rewrite Amara's destiny forever. "Young lady, I owe you my life, get in, because everything is about to change for you." Sparkles. That's chapter 1 condensed into a single paragraph, about 2,000 words. To reach 5,000 words, I'll need to expand it with more dialogue, flashbacks, emotions, and descriptive storytelling, her mother's sacrifice, her late father, detailed exam prep, more interactions with Malik, her inner conflict when she sees the woman, a longer hospital scene, and the emotional aftermath before the Rolls-Royce.